health and safety briefing in the event of emergency, leave the building by the marked exits. Any apologies? Announced urgent business? Nope. Conflict of interest declarations. Minutes for confirmation. So just for confirmation, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, and page 8. Nothing there, so matters arising, page 4, page 5, page 6.
Sorry, can I go back to page 5? It was just about the Culverden Memorial. Obviously, the wonderful new memorial at Culverden has highlighted, I think, the need for us to try and do something with our whole memorial. You know, they did such a good job, and it was spectacular, wasn't it?
It's fabulous.
And I think that we must keep that reasonably high on our agenda to do something about that. And I think the possibility of, you know, it's mentioned somewhere here about it being a legacy project for our 50-year anniversary. I think that probably is that would give us the time to really plan and fundraise and do it properly. I think if we were to adopt it as a legacy project, then when the public contact us and complain about our memorial, we can actually then say, we are doing something and this is the plans and we do that. You know, that's just a thought, but I think that would give us and the public focus.
I agree. I had some thoughts on that too, but I'll bring them up when we do the action thingy. Anything else there? Page 6. Page 7. Dan sent an email around questioning exactly what we did want out of that landscape plan from in front of 4 Square. And exactly who was going to pay for it and how much. It's hard to know until we get some sort of cost from them as to, or estimate from them as to what it is going to cost to get a plan done. And then from there, cost of doing the job. But Dan did say that he might pass that on to you, Hamish, as
so
come back to you.
Through Madam Chair, Dan has emailed me saying that an email you a couple of weeks ago saying what we need to know more about this before we can progress it, because he doesn't think the resolution is particularly clear. So he wants to know who's removing trees, who's coming up with the planning, who's doing the planning, who's paying for it at 4 Square Art, what's they expect to pay. So he's, there's some things he's not certain about. I mean, he can draw a plan if we're doing the hall, then just tell him that, and he'll price that accordingly. But if there's other things in there, then he needs to know about that. So it needs to be really clear.
Okay, my assumption was that we would be doing the job ourselves and the plan, but that the 4 Square would contribute something to it. But maybe we need to go get some estimates, then go to the 4 Square and ask them what they would be contributing. Yes, Michael?
Yes, I was of the same view as yourself, and I think until we get that information, we don't know how much we can ask of them to contribute towards.
Okay, so can we just leave that on the action sheet forward to follow up with some estimates on what a plan would cost, and the assumption is that the council would be doing the work.
Just in general process.
Thank you. Okay, and the other one was the State Highway 7A Urban Entrance Tidy Up project. I asked Dan about, did he have any feedback? for you
Yeah,
on
and
that?
it doesn't currently, but he will be sending through shortly.
Okay. Because it's kind of, bits have been done and bits haven't, and it's still quite messy. Okay. Okay, the heliport.
I'll move that that's a true.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Moved by Michael, seconded by Chris. Oh, I didn't know I was going to be doing this. Okay, heliport.
Yep, I can speak to that report, right?
Yes, please.
So obviously,
You're welcome to sit at the table,
I'll move mine.
because then anyone watching can hear what you're saying as well.
thank you, Madam Chair. I think the report is reasonably self-explanatory, but obviously we're looking for community board approval for the heliport pathway to be constructed on the reserve to provide access to the medical centre. It's similar to a heliport that's recently been built in Cheviot for the same purpose on council land. It is really about creating a better, safer access to the medical centre for helicopters and making sure that there's a good pathway to get people from the helicopter to the medical centre without having to worry about mud, etc., etc., etc. We've had a look at it and don't think there's any issues as far as licenses and all that sort of thing goes. It doesn't need a building consent. There's no noise assessment or resource consent required. It will need a formal agreement between the council and the community trust and anybody else to just make it very clear about who owns what and who's responsible for what. And that'll be done through an MOU. Obviously, there's some signage requirements. There will be some ongoing maintenance, such as line marking, windsocks, and just a visual check, which needs to make sure that it's all good to go all the time. Other than that, I was spoken to the community trust, and it says in here the community trust are funding the entire project. The community trust will be raising funding for the entire project and will be the responsible body for that funding, but they're not actually directly funding the whole project themselves. But they are the body that's organising that. And there's a map there outlining where it goes and how that sits, and also a photo of the recently constructed Cheviot helipad there, just to give an idea of what that looks like. So that's the report, and CAM's recommendation is that you approve the heliport to be used for emergency services and the pathway on the Hanmer Springs Sports Reserve, and that you instruct us to draft up an MOU to cover that off.
Could I ask a question? When we speak of emergency services, does that cover the picking up of people to be transferred into, for example, Christchurch as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So obviously, if there's a road accident or something, sometimes they're brought to the medical centre for a start and then need to be transferred, or some other sort of accident, and so it does cover both eventualities.
So other than recreational purposes of a helicopter coming in there, it pretty well covers all other situations.
Would it include, it's not including recreation?
No.
No, I said other than
that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, no. I mean, it is designed to be for medical purposes, but there is potential that the other types of emergencies that may use it, but the use of it would be relatively low, provide a good service for the community and also visitors to the community. So we think on that basis it's worthwhile doing.
I've got another question.
Yep.
Through the chair. The future use of the reserve and how that might work.
Yep.
In respect to the glide path of a helicopter going into that spot. Has that been taken into account from the council's point of view?
No, it hasn't. There's been no decisions about the future of the reserve at this stage. I mean, there's a mooted future use of the reserve and how that would work in with the helicopter landing pad hasn't been taken into consideration.
Right.
Oh, yeah, it's a long way away, really, isn't it? So
Well, I don't know that.
before there's any changes.
Yeah, I mean, these are not expensive structures to build. If in 10 years' time, the reserve's not available, the medical centre shifts or whatever, it's easy enough to build a new helipad in.
Yes, except it has a clear approach path over that area, which could be compromised in the future. That's all I'm saying.
We'll deal with that when it comes, but at least we've got something in the meantime.
Yeah.
Is there any tree removal needed there?
No.
How actual big an area it needs to be cordoned off when there's any events?
When a helicopter comes into land,
Yeah.
oh, well, you need to keep the public away, but everywhere, no permanent cordon, it'll just be.
And the other problem is you don't know where the helicopters come from. It could be coming from the coast and they've never landed there before. They can't use one of the Christchurch ones. So in a case like this, it's absolutely perfect because you know where it's going to land. But I mean, I don't know how many times in the old job I've been there and they've landed somewhere else. They'll land where they want to land. The pilot, they think it's safe, but it might be outfitted. This gives them a clear indication of where they want the public want them to land. So it's very easy to cordon it off.
Yeah.
And it is a problem with the people that are there. And I mean, if they move out further here somewhere in land, it really makes it difficult.
Yeah.
So that's a really good spot and a great idea.
Yeah, no, that's what I was wondering. That's all right. I'm all for it. I think it's brilliant.
So if I could ask, just to clarify what is being asked there, if we do have it's in a sporting field and there could be a sports event that's going on at the time, what prior information do they get that needs to be cleared?
I think there's something mentioned here that in the memorandum that sort of information will be laid out. Just in.
You sort of get the idea when you hear it.
Yes.
That's a really big clue that they're coming in, and if they're flying towards it, there's no other reason to be heading that way unless they're landing.
No, I can hear it from my place.
Yeah,
in Harrogate.
and you can see them. I mean, I don't know how many times I've been there. You'll be sitting there, people out there, they'll see it coming. They know, you don't have to tell them when it starts to lose height. So yeah, I think it's a perfect spot.
But I mean, that's laid out in the memorandum that's what's got to happen.
Through Madam Chair, it will be laid out in the memorandum, and there'll be some responsibility from the medical centre to get somebody out there to make sure people do move out of the way. Because they'll be going out there anyway, so they'll be telling anybody in the way to move off.
And they will ring the police if they're available.
Okay, and just for our own information, when that draft memorandum is drawn up, can the community board see a copy of it too, please, just so that we have information?
Yeah,
It's in our reserve. Yes.
Make sure we circulate it.
Madam Mayor,
Oh, I was just going to give a comparison. I've seen the one in Cheviot, the one in the bunker here. On opening day, the helicopter comes in and remotely lights up. In the past in Cheviot, they had to call out the local fire brigade to put their lights on to allow a visual for the helicopter to land. Just over a single track in and out of the bunker field here in Cheviot. And the keep it clear is for that where the ambulance actually drives, so that they can easily transport from a health centre in their instance, a distance away. They're looking to, track them out here, but I think the Cheviot one was used on 2 occasions on the minutes that
Yeah. That's great.
just to the other thing is that I spoke to Graham Hours about it, and I believe because it is concrete tilt slab, it can actually be lifted up and moved, were we to ever change our mind, think this wasn't the best place or wanted to move it down somewhere else, it can actually just be lifted up and moved. And as far as while I was in the UK, just worth noting, there was a horrendous incident of an emergency helicopter coming into land, and a load of children just thought it was so exciting, they actually ran straight for the helicopter as it was there, and they had to abort because they were right where it's going to land. And so, you know, that is something worth mentioning in the public way, where the over enthusiastic people can put themselves and the helicopter at risk.
Right, so I'd like to move that recommendation.
One more thing, sorry. So, I think this is so important that I wonder if we could perhaps at some stage or another look to see whether we can contribute towards it as well, because I think that this is for the Hanmer Springs community, and I think that I think it would be remiss of us to not contribute towards it.
I believe that the trust is going to come and speak to you at some stage about that once they get their ducks in a row.
No.
Okay.
I expect that.
Right, so were you moving that too, Tom? Were you moving that recommendation?
Of course, yes, absolutely.
No, I'm speaking.
Okay, and then with the proviso that we receive a copy of the MOU. I'll put that motion, all in favour? Against? Carried. Hold on. Financial report. Hi, Jason.
Hello all. Right, I'll get onto it. So the financial report there for the 9 months to the end of March, so we're 3/4 of the way through the year. So I'll quickly run through it. There's not a lot of surprises there compared to what I've reported previously. So that first page, the amenities rate, we started the year with a debt of just under $1 million. The rates and income largely are on budget, and then just scrolling right down to the total expenditure. For the 9 months we spent $330,000 as opposed to a budget for the period of $430,000. So we're about $108,000 lower than we had budgeted for, and that's predominantly in that first component being the general amenities expenditure, and the two items there that stick out are the salary and wages for or the wage allocation as a whole. We had budgeted $110,000 for the first 9 months and spent $44,000. And the other item there was a regulatory contractor that we've traditionally had a budget of $21,000 per annum. 3/4 of that's about $15,000, and to date we've spent nothing. So yeah, that is the bulk of the variance, which we've observed all the way through the financial year so far. The other area where we haven't spent is the level that we had budgeted for was repairs and maintenance on the hall. We had a budget about $15,000 for the full year. That equates to about $11,000 for the first 9 months, and we'd spent $1,600. So at the end of March, the balance of the debt in the amenities is sitting at $929,000, significantly lower than what we were predicting.
Can I ask a question there, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely.
About the hall. Is there going to be any work done on the roof this year of the hall? I notice it's looking pretty ordinary.
Yep, you can see that there is a line item there under hall expenses repaint of the roof. We've got a budget of $25,000 set aside. And to date we haven't spent anything.
So do you think that is going to happen? Do you know?
I'm not aware off the top of my head, sorry. I can check with the property team just to see whether it's still on their radar.
Okay, Tom?
Yeah, hi Jason. Just scrolling back just a fraction to the under expenditure on salaries and wages.
Yep.
I wonder that too.
And we're certainly a big under expenditure. Is there any likelihood that we will actually get up to the anticipated or the budgeted figure? And if not, will we keep that 66,000 because we might have a use for it?
Yes, no, of course. I mean, I can only go on what's been put in the timesheets from primarily the property team and the maintenance team. And at this stage, you're looking at having a significant permanent variance, which at the end of the year sits as a savings or an offset against the debt. So you do retain it. But it's just retained in your opening balance rather than here's a wad of money to be spent somewhere else, unless there's a desire to do so.
Thank you.
Just on that one through the chair.
Michael?
We had the same situation last year, did we not? And we still haven't. Are we going to go in this direction in every successive year as a result? But what is proposed in terms of a full budget is a considerable variance with what the end result is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going off what information's been provided to me for budget purposes, and then what's transpired as far as the actual work on the ground. So from what I gather, the work on the ground's getting done, but perhaps been a lot of the work in Hanmer Springs has been in reserves or on the track network, as you'll see a bit further down. So the amount that we had highlighted to come out of the amenities just hasn't been at the level that we'd budgeted for. I know conversely, there's a couple of the communities that have got big increases in what we've budgeted for, which they're not entirely happy about. But and it's just making sure that we do, the work is getting adequately recorded. And if we are in the future, that the amount of time devoted to the amenities in Hanmer Springs is considerably lower than what we budgeted for in the past, we just need to make that adjustment.
Okay.
Not sure whether that's helpful or not. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Carry on,
Well, at the moment, it's pulling down the level of debt, which is certainly the desire from the last long-term plan anyway.
If it goes towards that's great. It's just whether, certain work that needs to be done is getting done as well.
Yep. Okay, and within that savings so far this year, there's a few capital projects which we'll talk about in we've got the listing of the projects sitting in there. Just at the bottom of that page, we've got the track network group and just the balance of that account sitting on about 34,000, and then I think the second, third appendix to the report's got a full breakdown of that. The following page, we've just got the contingency fund sitting on a balance of 38,000. So we put 10,000 of the amenities rate into this account every year and just let it build up to deal with significant weather events, of which we've had none so far this year, but still a couple of months to go. Then the roadside construction account, we started the year with a debt of 80,000. We pulled down about 28,000 of rates and a little bit of expenditure, leaving that balance at about 56,000. We did have 75,000 set aside for street lighting. That hasn't been spent to date. The next two are the medical centre and the doctor's house, and both started with balances with debt levels of about 175,000. The medical centre balance at the end of March was 165,000. There was 10,000 set aside in the budget to do replacement of extractor fans and heat pumps, and very little of that had been spent to date. And then the doctor's house, the balance of the account at the end of March was 147,000. So it's reducing that level of debt. Then we're getting into the special funds, the development contributions fund for the township. The level of contributions is a lot lower than what we had budgeted for, so that affects this account and also the main account, the main upgrade account on the following page. So that balance, the amount of interest that's being charged is about a little bit more than what we've received in contributions so far this year. So the debt is slightly going up. Then we've got the walkway development fund. There's 11,000 on that, and I think we've got that scheduled to transfer into either the track network group or back into the amenities at the end of the year. Over on the following page, we've got the bridge preservation fund sitting on a balance of just on $100,000. It's normally May that we receive the bungee jump royalties, so we're expecting another roughly $6,000 to come in for that, so they'll push that balance up to about the 106, 107,000 that we had budgeted for at the end of the year. Similarly, for the tourism fund, started the year with 35,000. A little bit of interest has been earned so far, and there's about 4,000 we've got budgeted for the bungee jump royalties to come in, and again, it all comes in May. Now, as I mentioned before, the domain upgrade DC fund there, the contribution is significantly lower than what we had budgeted for, offset a little bit by increasing amount of interest, but the balance is sitting on about 175,000 at the end of March. And then the final special funds there, we've got the pavilion fund, which is sitting there with interest getting added on a monthly basis. It's sitting on just under 27,000. We've got the reserves contestable fund with a current balance of 71,000. And then the staff house fund started the year with 156,000, about 4,000 of interest, and then total expenditure so far has been 100,000. So the balance of that's sitting on about 60,000. We're expecting another 20,000 odd to be spent by the end of the year. And then the next page is just a reconciliation of the contestable fund, sitting with that $71,000 budget balance, and then the track network group, a balance of 34,000. So it's a full breakdown of the rate money that's come in plus the heritage grant, and then the expenditure that's gone out. So there's been 11,500 of external expenditure, and then the balance of the 36,000 of the wage allocations that have gone into that project. And then the final page is just the list of projects that we had allowed for in the budget and where we're placed at the end of March. So we had total projects of 366,000, and to date we've spent 106, and the bulk of that has been in Brook Dawson, funded by the staff house fund, and you can see the other projects there, including the roof repaint and a few of the projects within the reserves, largely unspent by the end of the year.
And just to confirm, those funds will be carried forward?
Sorry, Mike.
Yes, I'm just confirming that unspent at this stage, about 260,000 will be carried forward.
Yeah, well, if the projects are still valid at the end of the year, there's some that may have been done or some that don't need to be done, we can reassess those. But generally, if there's still work to be done and the community board agree to that, we will carry those and consequently the council agrees to it, we will carry those budgets forward to the next year.
Thank you.
Yeah, it would be good to know what some of those projects are that aren't going to happen, like the commenting on that, I know you talked about the 75,000, and I think that was the street lighting. Are those things going to happen? Which of these projects are going to happen this year and which ones aren't, and why? Because we're getting close to the end of the year and there always seems to be an awful lot of projects that just keep getting carried over and not done.
Yeah, I agree. What I'll do, I'll flick the teams that are responsible for those areas just to give me something to put in that note column there, because that will provide where we're expected to go. And some of those items with the hall and in the reserves, there should be a reason why they haven't progressed.
That would be much appreciated. Tom?
This is not for you, Jason, just a comment. We've got 25,000 there for repainting the roof of the hall.
Right.
I wonder if it would be worth getting a quote on re-roofing it, because it isn't in good condition. And if we're spending 25,000 on repainting it, may not be hugely to actually replace it.
Well, that's a question we're going to have to pass on to the
so we can perhaps pass it on to Dan or whoever to perhaps get a quote for re-roofing.
Okay, so we can put that in as a request onto our action sheet, a request for Dan. Anyone else have any comments there?
Let's ask the question about the Reserve Dawson Bridge. I can see that there's been a lot of issues with it and it's had to be resurfaced. Is that reflected here in that money, or is that still to come out of this 17,687?
Yeah, I see that.
I think we did have a forecast of about 40,000 for it. All I can see, and again, I'm just relying on the numbers rather than what physical works have been done. So to date, we spent 22,000. There's still more work to be done. That remaining 17,000 will be utilised.
Yeah, there's certainly been a lot of conversation on Facebook page about it. People can walk their dogs over it and
How precious.
among other things.
But yes, they've asked for it to be resurfaced in a current letter, so that's why I didn't know that already.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else?
The acceptance of the finances.
Move that information be received. Someone else second, Tom? Put that motion, all in favour? Against, carried. And action sheet. So, number one, the hub project. Mary is not here, so I haven't heard any more unless anyone else has. The new street light installation, options for Arguins Road. That's going to be actioned after Rippingale Road lights have been installed.
So when we agreed to the lighting, I believe there was just one light that was going on to Rippingale Road, but there were 4 going on to Arguins Road. Is that correct? We decided that there was only one that was required.
That was my understanding too. There was one up the.
So just the one's going ahead first, and then the other 4 was going to be installed.
Yeah, I think it's because the developer is doing the rest of them.
We were going down to the bottom. We were just doing
this
our section.
Yeah, this was from the Crawford walkway through to the Pines Holiday Camp, wasn't it? That's where they were going.
Yeah.
From that bend.
And mostly, I think, well,
Mostly on-
we saw a map that Dan had given us.
Yeah.
And we pinpointed where we wanted those lights. I'm not aware of there being any changes since then. And
because we prioritised which ones of those we wanted with the options.
we wanted lighting on the corners, like that S bend,
Yes,
Yeah,
and then on the corner of Rippingale Road.
Yeah.
So I'm not aware of any changes, so. Okay, so it's 3, 4, the entrance tidy up. Has Dan sent you anything at this stage? Okay, oh, here's ours, Tom. Number 5, the 10-year, 150-year celebration. And the 5 legacy projects that we talked about. The cenotaph was one of those. And then my question is, can they be funded with development contributions when we do look at the long-term plan next time? So that'll be after the next election. Can we ask to have development contributions set up for these projects?
The development contributions are a mechanism where to pay for growth. And so if you think that these things, there's a component of them that will be to the benefit of people that have moved here, then you might be able to get some development contributions, but the old days of saying, we'll just get development contributions to pay for this, well.
I agree with that, and I had a big think about it, and as far as I can see, I think most of these things are related to some kind of growth. Certainly, we've gone from a tiny little village with not so much happening to something that is much bigger. And Anzac is something that has grown over the years everywhere. And it's certainly growing for our village as more and more people come.
Retrospective growth,
no,
future growth.
No, and it's still growing. The avenue upgrade is something that continues to need upgrading all the time because we get more and more visitors. So it is growth. And things like finding other activities like the walk up Conical Hill and the lighting of it, that's adding an extra activity because we have extra growth and extra things that people want to do. So my thought is that there is some growth in that. But I guess, that's a discussion that I would like to be able to have when we come to our discussing our long-term plan next time, because I think there is a growth aspect in those projects.
you'd have to show evidence of that.
No, well, the government is moving away from development contributions, changes it's making and moving something called development levies. And development levies are much more infrastructure focused. So things like pipes, pumps, roads, those sorts of things, rather than some of these projects that are more community focused.
So, okay, so those changes are coming when, or it's already in place?
Well, we don't know when they're coming, the government has signalled that they're coming.
Okay, well, we'll talk about it at the time, but if we can keep that on our action sheet and talk about it when it comes up and see whether there is some room for us to do something about it.
If the development fund contribution isn't the route to go for these legacy projects, what would you suggest would be a better route?
I think that you have to look at each project itself and say where might we apply for funding. So there might be lotteries funding, might be RAD funding, might be poker machine funding. It will depend on the projects. There might be government funding for memorial celebrating dollars in return, those sorts of things. I just think that development contributions have been used pretty loosely by this council in the past, and we've got in trouble with some of our development contributions. The government is really tightening up on how the contributions required. The previous government was already going down that track as well, so I think that you know, a lot of where we've used development contributions in the past, that won't carry on in the future. So I think that we have to look at those alternative funding sources, but we have to do it on a project by project basis. There may be local organisations that are prepared to help fund some of these things. You know, and Alison, the ones you mentioned, the tourism based, you do have the bridge fund there that you could potentially utilise for some of these as well. The Bundy fund, so
we had talked about that in relation to the State Highway 7A entrance already.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
And I understand.
you mentioned some of these other projects are tourism based, that to cater for tourists coming here. Development contributions contribute to new residents coming, and that's what they're designed to do, provide that infrastructure for the new residents.
There are new residents coming here as well, because there are a lot of sections opening up, and we know that the more sections there are, the more people coming here, the more pressure there is on our town.
Yeah, but that's a mandatory benefit.
No, it may not be at the time, but I think we need to start talking about what we're going to use to, or how we're going to fund these projects.
I agree. I think the way to do that is look at each project, see where the benefits of that project lie, who benefits from it, and who might have a more natural inclination to fund these things.
Okay, so if we can just leave that, number 5, if we can just put a comment there that we'd like to look at either development contributions or any other grant funding that's available for those projects. Mari.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just note that it might be worthy of a chat with Annie and John at Foursquare, because I know our Foursquare and have been, there is a fund that they can access through the Foursquare network, and so that might not be funding the whole project, but that might be a good seeding fund to actually start having a look at. And I know probably also important to note, I mean, in Colwyn, they didn't recite any of their historical memorial gates. That was a brand new project, so you could leave. I'm just thinking about your memorial of Mary Ave, that could remain in situ, and you could have another new project adjacent to wherever you plan to put it. So it doesn't need, you don't need to take that one away and put it somewhere else. You could actually have a whole new project. Yeah, because that's what Colwyn did.
Thank you.
And Chair, perhaps also that we taking Amy's suggestion that we actually separate those items rather than lumping them together. If we actually separate them, then that focuses us on the appropriate funding mechanism source.
Oh, absolutely. I was not combining them at all. They are 5 separate, very separate items.
But then we can approach each one appropriately.
They will need that, Agreed. Any more on that, or number 6, northern side of Conical Hill Lookout? Anything on that, Chris?
No, not at this stage.
7, Heritage Forest, Mary was following that up. I haven't heard anything. Number 8, the cenotaph. So we've already discussed that, nothing to do there. Chorus Fibre Network. Anything on that, Tom?
No, nothing further at this stage.
And the tree removal outside Full Square, we've already discussed.
Yeah.
Okay. Annual review items. Anything on there that anybody wants to raise on that page between 1 and 5? It's the Hanmer Springs Severe Weather Closure Control Protocol, inventory of council buildings. snow plan that comes up in June. Fitness equipment and long-term plan matters. On page 29, medical centre, doctor's house targeted amenity rate. That will come up when we're talking about long-term plan along with the development corporation contributions and anything else we want to talk about. Pavilion upgrade, State Highway 7A turn-off, Village Green. The Hanmer River Reserve. This was, the comment there is the TIF fund, Tourism Infrastructure Fund, was closed for 2023, so other funding options would need to be investigated. That was back in 2023. And we haven't had any feedback at all. Could we put Dan's name next to that if he is the one who would be following up with that? I mean, has that TIF fund come up again? Is it going to be coming up? Or do we need to really put a stake in the ground and say that we want something looked at for the very next funding round, whenever that may be?
I agree, something needs to be to update that.
So can we put that back to the action sheet now with Dan's name on it? Because at this stage it's been sitting there clearly for at least 2 years.
So I'm just looking at the Tourism Infrastructure Fund website. Madam Chair, and the last update round was 2023. Been no further events.
So it doesn't come up every year. When does it say when it might come up again?
Well, I think the thing to note is that we've had a change of government that has a view on how these things are funded. So the Tourism Infrastructure Fund used to have several rounds a year. Since we've had a change of government, we haven't had a round of funding. This current government is looking at other ways to fund tourism infrastructure.
So from that point of view, can we still put Dan's name to it and find out where we might now look for some funding to tidy up this area?
Yes, we can do that.
Please.
It doesn't cost us as well as a consultant.
No, we'll just go and see what funding is available. One of the things to note is that generally with this government, any funding they provide is co-funding. So you'll need to put some money in if you want to get some money from them. And it will need to be a permanent sort of okay. So.
Okay, but if we can at least investigate where we might get that, given that there is no TIF funding or likely to be none anymore. Because we still need to tidy that area up. Okay, village lighting proposal, anything on that? Accessible playground equipment, township upgrade debt, Amiri Avenue setting up footpaths. That's another one that really needs to be discussed when we go to the long-term plan discussions. Ramp and access to the top of Conical Hill. All done, nothing else on that, anybody?
Better, we probably make a comment. I know the long-term plan, 27-37 seems a long way away. But actually we start with the moment.
Yeah.
On that, so soon you get your heads around what you might like from the plan, what you're planning. And because this is actually not thinking about what you need tomorrow, this is about what you need for the next 10 years. And people are really good at thinking about next year and maybe the year after, but other than that, not many people look at it strategically and say, what are the big nuts in the 10-year horizon that we need? So if you spend some time thinking about those things, that would be enormously helpful. So I think put you in a good position for the long-term plan, because you've actually thought about it, worked out what you need. It's not fanciful, and you're then in a good position, and it can just keep driving forward. So when we do the next review of the long-term plan, I'm thinking about 3 years further out than we've already thought. Thanks, Amy. I think it's encouraging to do that.
I think last time we had a workshop, we had a powerhouse meeting where we discussed, I think that was more to do with some of the submissions in the annual plan, but we could do the same thing.
No, we had a workshop.
Yeah, we did have a workshop here, but we had had a discussion at the powerhouse. I don't think you were available for it,
That's how
but the rest of us did meet
I
and
didn't know about that discussion then.
What did we forget? I suppose then if you look at those 5 legacy projects,
Yes.
that's where they float into, don't they?
Yes,
that's right.
yeah,
So we need to have a little meeting amongst ourselves somewhere.
yes, it's a good idea.
Probably a chat with Jason too about some of the format he might need for that too. Okay. Council update cover. Any comments on any of the council update? You'll have all noticed that Mari sent round an email about the changes to the RMA. And on the 16th of May, there is going to be a Zoom meeting for an hour that you can join if you want to hear what changes that the government might be proposing for that. And my other question was in relation to the water. Where is this up to now? We're out for submission, the council, we're out for submissions. Yes.
You are.
I'm in mind who's next. So submission period closed on the 21st of April. Tomorrow at our council meeting, we are going, there were 6 submitters that have asked to be heard. So we're hearing those tomorrow. Deliberations will take place on an extraordinary meeting on the 13th of May. So that's where that's at. I think it was about 50 something.
53.
Respond, yeah, 53 submitters. But of course, 6 needed to be heard, so that's what we're doing tomorrow as part of our full council agenda.
And just a rough outline, the submissions were that were in favour and the submissions that weren't in favour.
Yeah, that's in our agenda for tomorrow. There's reasonably equal split, to be fair. This is my personal comment, not a comment of council, but my personal comment is that perhaps the submitters that have provided, that came to the sessions and understand or understood the context or the complexity, perhaps has given us more in-depth analysis of the options or the proposed favourite position of the council, but of course we'll deliberate that and on the 13th, so not for me to preempt the discussion.
No, I wasn't asking that. I was just wondering what submitters said.
Yeah, so that's
Said.
that's where it's sitting at this point.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the item on the Canterbury Museum draft annual plan, what was, it says referral period. What's that relate to, please?
Money.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so their submission timeframe is, how does that work? Is what I was asking.
Yeah, oh god, how am I best going to just run this? So of course, we're a contributing council under the Museum Act of 1977 or whatever it is. And so we're a contributing council financially. You're probably aware that the museum is undertaking a significant upgrade. And so this discussion was really an update from that from the museum board's position on, where the upgrade was at and the financial aspect of that.
Yeah, my question was though, what is the referral period? I don't know.
That's a submission timeframe. Yeah.
Madam Chair, so the draft.
Oh, okay.
has
Yeah.
referred to the
Right.
councils for their feedback. It's not a public.
Yeah.
submission process, so,
Yeah.
so it's, they refer it to us for our feedback.
Yeah,
Right,
sorry.
that was my question. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions on those? No? Well, golly gosh.
But I do have something I could suggest
Yes,
at the end of this discussion, another idea.
yes. We've got plenty of.
We have got a bit of time.
So is this kind of like an urgent business item?
No, this has got nothing to do with that.
Oh, okay.
But this is looking at what the community board and the council think about it. It's an idea.
Is it part of the agenda then?
No, it's not on the agenda.
So we could go out of,
Yes, because when we,
So, well, at this stage, it's 2:00 almost. And we have completed the agenda, but we have Ian Duncan from Wakakatahi coming at 3:00. So would it be best to adjourn from now till 3? Okay,
I know that he's in Canterbury because I've been in touch with his secretary this morning and I have emailed him to say he's welcome to come early. But I haven't had any response. I've just checked, I haven't had any response to that. I will mention it to the library staff, just in case you might be sitting in there doing some work or.
do we know what it's about?
We invited him.
Shall I adjourn then?
As a result of the.
well, hang on.
All right.
I'm going to adjourn.
so.
Right.
Chris Huey, just one of the members of the board.
Tom Davies from the Ministry Council.
Stacey Ingalls, a community board member.
I'm Mary Blackman, Mayor of Murray.
Aye.
Nice to have you.
And
I'm still reaching to the Ministry Council.
yeah, so I invited you here because we've had several fatal road accidents recently.
Yep.
Which caused obviously tremendous sadness and loss of life, but also huge disruption to the transport network. So I wanted to sort of mention that, and also the junction of State Highway 7 and 7A, which is probably not one of our best junctions. Particularly if you're coming from Springs Junction to Hanmer, that sharp left turn is absolutely awful. And just sort of do the code with you on some of those issues.
Yep. If it helps, I've brought a crash map. So we could have a bit of a look at the route around the junction.
Yeah.
The junction's interesting for us because we've got crashes around it, but we don't actually get crashes at the junction. Although we don't realise it's not an optimal intersection by any means. So, but yeah, look, more than happy to take your insights and thoughts and suggestions. I'm quite happy to grab the crash map as well and have a bit of a look at them.
I'd love to start with having a look at the crash map.
Yep. Three copies, so you may have to share it.
I don't need my house. I've been to myself. Don't need it. I don't need it. I think enough of them.
So just to explain how the map works, the top four on that are the intersections that you're talking, that we're talking about. The crashes that are shown there aren't associated with the intersection, so we'll come back to that. How the colouring works is it's pretty straightforward. Red is a fatal crash, orange is serious, I think yellow is minor, and green is non-injury. And the period that we've looked at for this is 2020 to 2025, really. So it's definitely on that longer route on 7. There's definitely enough crashes to take a closer look at that as a corridor point of view, particularly with the number of fatal crashes that we've got in that. And so there are a number of treatments that can be done with that. The challenge with all of those is working out what they are and then aligning them into the next NLTP and then getting priority for funding. And that's the hard space at the moment because money's tight, but it's the same for everyone. So
those numbers that are in there,
yeah,
are they the fatalities or?
they're the total number of crashes at those locations.
Total crashes.
Yeah, so no. So I think there's been 3 fatalities in that 5-year period, or 3 fatal crashes.
Yeah, I can count up quite a lot more fatalities, but probably over a longer period. That would probably be over about the last 25 years.
Yeah.
There's been quite a lot of fatalities there. So when they're looking for funding for these projects and fatalities come into it, what timeline would they want to include in it?
Oh, so typically we look at a 5-year period because we tend to do a whole heap of things on the network over that 5 years, from anywhere from resealing them to put new barriers and things in. We could look at a longer period, but my understanding is we typically look at 5 years.
Yeah, there's certainly been a lot of fatalities on those bends in that time that I'm talking about, not just the 5 years.
So look, I'd be quite happy to get your thoughts on, you're more familiar with the bends than I am. I've probably been over them, a dozen times or something in my time. You'll drive them every day and be aware of where the issues are.
I'll ask that to you. It's just Google Earth map.
Yep.
And the dotted line I've drawn is obviously not the road. You can see the road it follows the river largely. But it's just, I can remember on an occasion, probably about 25 years ago, we had somebody from NZTA come and talk to us when I was on the council. And they'd just done some road straightening out here where there was like a Devil's Corner. Just as once you come out of the turn off there, that road was straightened. And at the same time, the guy from NZTA said one area that he felt would be really good to do something about was these bends. And he said, roughly, he pointed out that line through there where I've dotted as being a line that you could run a road through there. And I actually think power lines go through there now too. And he felt that would be really good to get rid of the bends. I know that's incredibly expensive and there's a lot to it, but it's a thought and something that I'd hate to get forgotten. I know that the NZTA did a lot of work on the inland road. There was a whole lot of bends taken out there, and there would be an awful lot more traffic on this road than there is on the inland road. can't exactly remember what they called that cut that they put through on the inland road. But it was- Pardon?
Wales back.
No,
There's an awful back. On the inland road.
just trying to think, was it McFarlane's were there, the property? I'd have to look at a map. But it's a very similar sort of thing, and I know that we certainly get a lot more traffic on this road than that one has had. So I was just a thought, I'd hate it to be lost completely. So just putting that out there.
Yeah, I suppose there's a couple of things on that. One is that it's interesting sort of driving up here because you have got a number of different speed limits. So you go from 80 to 100 quite a bit. One of the things is that, we could look at a more consistent speed over a longer section of road. The challenge a little bit with inland Kaikoura is you'll be aware that predominantly a lot of the benefits that inland Kaikoura road got was as a result of the earthquake. Because it was an opportunity then to actually get some better alignments when they were rebuilding it.
Pre-earthquake.
Was it pre-earthquake?
Yep.
Yeah, probably back in the days when it was still a state highway, it was still a highway.
Okay, yeah.
For what was handed to the council. And is the speed restrictions there, because they were on late 2016, early 2017, following the earthquake, the 80K zones, have they made any difference, to the crash rates through that area?
Oh, look, I could go back and get them to have a look and see what it's done to them.
I mean, it depends on the volume of traffic as well, doesn't it? But,
Yeah, and the other, sorry.
No, I was just going to say anecdotally, through the weekend past, with that being APKs, whilst the people still describe it as a sense of frustration, but I think if you talk to the local fireys, they would say their reduction stats is zero by 80Ks through the weekend past. People still say it's a jolly nuisance, but I think if you look at that's only anecdotal community knowledge, but it's certainly, yeah.
I think most of those fatalities have still happened since that
Because
change.
that's only 5 years, but I mean, what was it like pre them changing to 80Ks? How does that compare?
Yeah, look, we could certainly get somebody to do some analysis on that and give you some feedback on that if you want.
Well, let's face it, that some of the crashes we know about there were drugs involved, and the speed was definitely involved, where there were 3 fatalities at once. So going way above even 100. So
yeah, and of course, with a substantial number of commercial vehicles and logging trucks and milk trucks and what have you, you do need that opportunity to actually, you do need those 100K stretches to really get past some of those trucks, because otherwise, particularly on the hillier parts, you're stuck behind them and you're not doing 80.
yeah, I mean, it wouldn't matter what the speed limit was. There's always going to be some idiot who wants to go around it, and you're just giving them more opportunity with all those bends to then create fatalities. So,
and the other issue as well is when there are these accidents on the road, because it is so narrow, there is no alternative. And so, the most recent fatality, amongst many hundreds of people, I'm stuck for 6 hours the other side of the crash and unable to get home, and because of the narrowness of the road and the delays in getting the serious traffic accident unit here and what have you, 6 hours stuck in limbo is pretty tough. For hundreds of people, not just a few, because of the substantial amount of movement from, along State Highway 7, but also from Hanmer through to Amberley and Christchurch. So the accidents are terribly regrettable, and the waste of time is also terribly regrettable. But it's the combination of the two that make it uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Actually, I might be incorrect when I was saying it's on the inland road. It might have been the other road. I'm sorry, I need to check that.
Later road,
Yeah.
yeah, they've got changed, so it's much better.
I do need to check that, yeah. But anyway, regardless, that was what they did. There was a section that was very windy, bends, and they straightened it out completely, very similar to what we're talking about there.
We used to, you know, in days gone past, if you went back sort of 10, 15 years, we used to have a program where we looked at areas where we could take a bend and straighten it out. It's harder now to, well, I can say it's harder, but we've got more options in terms of how we treat them, because we used to just preserve the 100 road open speed limit everywhere. And over the last 10 years, we've certainly started to use speed limits more smartly.
Yeah, but that was my point, you know, so I'm just thinking of the three boys, three and a girl, who were killed on those bends. And I mean, it was just stupid speeding, but the bends just leave it open for anyone who was doing the wrong thing. And I mean, they're lucky, it was lucky that there wasn't any more people killed in that kind of accident than there was. They just ignored the speed limit and the bends just were there.
That was about 20 years ago, that accident. Yeah, yeah.
So are there, along the route, if we leave the intersection to last maybe, but along the route, are there specific areas that, you know, if you had a magic wand and you'd do something on first, where would you start? What's is there some that are worse than others in terms of I can see what in terms of severity of the crashes, but
You're there, just where most of things are. It's down there.
It's that area that's actually that I have outlined there. That's where the bends are. That's where the really serious accidents have happened. That's where the 80k zone is.
yeah.
And that would bypass the 80k zone.
Yeah, I think the topography is you've got the quarry on one side, haven't you? Particularly when the most recent one was, you've got the quarry on one side and then you've got to drop down to the river on the other. So there's so little space to lay with.
Yeah, you can't straighten the road in that position, and that was what this guy said at the time was
Substantial excavation.
Yeah.
On the quarry side.
If you stand up near the winery and you look up there, you can sort of see a straight line up over the hill where that goes, where the dotted line goes there.
Mm-hmm.
How much, past a policeman doing speed enforcement on the way here, how much speed enforcement do you get? Do you get enough to keep the speeds normalised a bit, or is it?
They're always on they've got staff who's going up there all day, every day.
You've got road police based here in Hanmer, you've got.
We've got full allocation across the Hurunui.
Okay, good.
So the driving from Hanmer.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Travelling in there.
Yeah, they're pretty visible.
They're just dangerous bends.
So I know it's not Hanmer, it's not on the State Highway 7 that we're talking about, but there was a horrendous accident last night on State Highway 1 between the Motano turn off and the Waikato Valley, Scarborough Valley, and so the road was closed for 6 hours also. So I'm just, we're a large area with a lot of roading network
and not a lot of options where people can go when the roads are blocked.
I was just going to say that there is an option, but the option was if you were on the north side of that accident site, you had to go pretty much all the way to the leader, would be the only sealed road. So you had to be driving an hour north background statement makes even if you were looking for an alternate. My understanding is that Google, this may be another option. Google told people to go through and over the Kaiwara. And if you were not used to shingle roads, that was quite an issue for a number of people as well. So, you know, it's okay to offer an option. And I think even with the fire that happened in Waipara, you know, the only option was to go around Rampaddock Road, and people that are not used to driving on, you know, unfortunate shingle roads, actually it's equally dangerous for them to be doing that. So it's not an easy environment that we're trying to manage.
And to be fair to NZTA, they say you're not going to signpost.
Correct.
On down Rampaddock.
Yeah.
With their file saying, no, there's no option.
Yeah.
So people found it on Google Maps and, you know, it's a narrow winding shingle road. I went up there 11 o'clock at night. Was there for about 10 minutes and counted 50 vehicles coming through there, which is more than you see there in a week probably.
Well, I'm aware last night, and I need to follow this through, I'm aware that the local farmer spent through to about 11 last night pulling people out of the ditch because they were driving on road surfaces that they weren't used to. You know, they had a horse float or they had, you know, and so they're in a, it would have been better to sit and wait. Actually, everybody would have been safer. But, you know, that's not what happens in that immediate moment.
So from our.
So sorry, I'm.
So from our. No, it's all good. But from our point of view here, I mean, getting rid of those bends would certainly make that road a good deal safer. If that was ever a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, I never say anything's impossible, but I suppose currently what we're funding and doing, there's a plethora of things we can look at, which aren't we can look at things like side barrier and rumble strips, but if they're going too fast, they're still going to hit the barrier, and if they're going too fast, the rumble strips won't help them. The challenge a little bit that while you've got reasonable volumes here, it's not big volumes in comparison to other roads, and it's getting prioritisation then to do Ben's work. But look, I can certainly take that comment back that the Ben's area is along that section, the bit that you've given me is the area that you've got most concern with. And you feel if they could be straightened or a better alignment found at some point, then that might be a better solution.
So Ian, and through the we've passed there's a lot more visual areas and stuff. Than there is through the BNZ, so cheese cutters and stuff, and you know that does have an impact on driver behaviour. So that might be something that we actually more. Barriers.
Yeah, well, certainly you're right. It does create that sense of side friction. So you know that is something that we could certainly look at what's possible through there.
Yeah, I think anything that would make it safer would be good. I mean, realignment would be great, but if you can make it safer with some of the barriers. I know that after one of the fatal accidents, there was a courier driver who ran off the side going up the hill there, and there has been a barrier put up that side of the hill. So perhaps a few more of those might make people slow down.
Yeah, I don't know about the relative cost of the cover since
It just depends, I think, where we can get what we can get founded. And the type of mix of stuff. I think we seem to be doing more wire rope barriers now than we are. You just need to be able to get them tensioned. Challenge a little bit with them as well as the W section or the tri-beam barriers, which are the solid ones. They tend to damage less, whereas the occupants of the vehicles have a harder time and tend to rebound into the carriageway. But the wire rope ones then tend to all rip out, and you need to come back and resocket them. But I mean, your barrier maintenance is now a big cost for us because people are hitting them, which is good. You know.
We just use, if I may, the week pass. The biggest challenge I see when you're on a windy piece of road to have the barriers, if a car breaks down or, you know, that actually creates more of a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I drive that road every day and it can be an issue if a vehicle, you know, run a pedal, do whatever it is, you know, they actually can't get across, you know, off the carriageway on the road, and actually on a windy patch of road, you know, I mean, it does create more problem.
Most of those barriers are where there's a complete drop though, aren't they?
No, not necessarily through the Wicker Pass, but yeah, there is probably still a reasonable off the carriageway where it could be a little bit further to the side to allow car park. But I know, I mean, even a heavy, you know, a combine harvester or, you know, some tractor and the drill or, you know, any farm machinery, they are wider than the average car. Even when they're on that road, they can't get off to the side enough to even manoeuvre safely. So I think that is a problem by having a narrow carriageway available.
Well, look, it's the added disbenefit to that for us is it's harder for maintenance crews for the very same reason.
Yeah.
You know, we tend to have to close a lane or run a block on them because there's nowhere for them to pull over either.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I would like the idea of having a barrier for the sake of it, but where there is, like for instance, where that fatality was with the courier driver, there was a complete drop off the side there. So it was a good reason for a barrier up that side.
The advantage of barriers is they visually narrow the road and people slow down.
Yeah, and if it slows the traffic down.
Yeah.
That's the idea of it, yeah.
That's right.
I mean, as a motorcyclist, I hate them, but I'd rather there was no barriers. At least you can slide.
I don't like rumble strips. I think rumble strips.
They're annoying, but they are probably quite good.
I don't know, good to know some research around. My thoughts. Yeah.
So
Your intersection, give me your insights onto that, because it's not featuring in our crash stats, but we are aware it's got some challenges. So what are the biggest issues with it?
probably let Chris talk to that, being the ex-policeman here.
I remember coming to this community board a long time ago, and someone else was talking about it. When you head that way, they were going to put a new road, you know, when you come down, if you're coming from the pass, getting towards there, there's a shed.
Yep.
They were going to run that road straight across, take out both rivers and come across.
Yeah.
It was a plan. Whatever happened to that? But apart from the fact it's gone up in money. But I mean, when you look at something like that, that would solve a lot of issues, because that current bridge is a lovely old bridge. That intersection is not a flash intersection.
Yeah.
For the number of people that come in here.
So that would also take out the cutting route, Chris.
Yep.
You come in on the north side of the Hanmer.
Yes, it basically went straight across and hooked around. I can't remember the far end of it, but it solved a whole lot of problems.
I could certainly find out what work was done on it and where it landed or arrested itself, and give you a bit of feedback on that and why. With its current location, is there something that we could do that would substantially improve its operation? Or is there one particular movement that's more problematic than others?
Well, I think the fact that it's an old bridge, it always will be, even though that rock face is wired up, that will come down again one day.
Yeah.
Iron and all, it's not a good road.
Yeah, yeah.
And if it goes, we're in trouble. There's only one way out, and it's a bit of a four-wheel drive through, isn't it?
I think specifically the focus on the intersection is that it's the angle to the to the state highway. And if it was squared up more, I know it's sort of attempted to be squared up, but if you could square it up more, because like when you're coming from south and go through the network,
Because it's not squared up, and if you're coming from north, then you have to get right down slow, and it's not a particularly big slip area to.
And the
Yeah.
camber is completely wrong as well, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
If you've got a long wheelbase vehicle, like a bus or a long caravan,
Logging truck.
logging truck, yeah,
Trucks.
All wrong.
then getting round that corner, if you're coming from the north, is really tricky.
Yeah, and I've seen caravans coming to, can't do it in one turn, you know, particularly if they don't know the road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
If they're coming too fast, they have to reverse them backwards and forwards a bit.
And they have improved that slip lane on that north side, but it's still, doesn't give you a lot of
No,
time to slow down.
No.
I actually didn't look at it, at the Google Earth for that, but I wonder if like a V, you know, like the highway running that way and one coming in from the north, one coming in from the south. Through there is a possibility. Cutting through, I mean, there's the Ferry Bridge Lodge in there, but as you move out to the intersection as it is now, there's quite a bit of open space.
yep.
I'm not sure what do you call it, the layout of that land is there.
You'd have to build it all up, wouldn't you? If you
Yeah.
built it all up, you'd have all the room wanted. But then again, the cost of that for a new bridge,
So is that
you don't know,
goes, the topography of that land, that gap goes right down all the way along.
You could fill all that in, it would cost a fortune
Yeah,
and make a nice road. Now, I don't know whether you'd want to wire it up or if the bridge goes one day, you still got the missing bridge. You'd rather have an old bridge, you keep the old bridge, keep both bridges.
One of the things our safety engineer noted about it was that the existing right turn bay might need to be lengthened. He wondered whether in periods of high demand, like you know, summer season or something on in Hanmer, whether that's causing a problem. So,
I came back from Christchurch the other night and there were people turning. There was a long line of traffic and there were people turning and they were still sitting in the main carriageway waiting to turn. So, and that was, I mean, admittedly, that was Anzac weekend. But yeah, there's lots of busy weekends like that where the traffic does line up down the main carriageway.
Friday afternoons.
Yeah.
That's good. It's a busy spot.
And this is way down the list of complaints and everything else like that, but the bridge is the highlight or that's your entrance to Hanmer.
It's a beautiful.
And it's a beautiful bridge, but it's scruffy. It could really love a decent coat of paint. It would really enhance the elegance of the village.
Yeah, what is the policy on like maintaining the paintwork on the bridge? Is there a timing thing?
there will be
Or do they wait till somebody says something?
well, in the past, we've always had cyclic maintenance, particularly on our steel structures, but also on our wooden ones, because you don't want them. You know, part of the reason that a lot of them are painted white is we want to keep the fact that people can see them and don't hit them. So I can find out about what the cycle for maintenance on that bridge is.
It does need painting.
Yeah, and I can point that out to the team as well. I've got a few to-dos on this.
Thank you so much for coming.
We like that.
And thank you for this.
Well, there's some things I would like to come back on. I would like to go away and see what difference the lowering the speed limits has made. I would like to understand if we have ever done any alignment work and where that's got to and you know, forward wise, what the conditions might be that we might consider doing further alignments. And then I think that section you talked about with the bends, we'll go through that, ask the safety team to have a cursory look through that and see whether there's potentially some barrier work that could be done or suggested into the next NLTP to see whether we can get priority for funding for that. For the bridge itself, we'll, for the intersection itself, we'll see where the initial proposals came, which would have included the bridge alignment, and see where they were parked up and if there's any long-term planning for that bridge. We'll get the cycle for maintenance on the bridge. And then we'll suggest we want a bit of a look at lengthening the right turn bay and whether there's any opportunity to square up that intersection and what that might look like. And so we'll come back to you with our thinking on those.
So these numbers, as a statistician, do these numbers indicate to you that there is an issue, or is this typical of many roads in New Zealand and this wouldn't really be a priority? You know, I just want to just be honest, you know, it's significant.
I'll read you what the safety engineer said. So he said that so this is the route rather than the intersection issue. So based on the 3 fatals, the collective risk would be at a level whereby we could consider safety interventions for future NLTP funding. So it's saying that yes, there's, you know, we shouldn't just go nothing to see here, or it's so low down compared to everything else, we can just ignore it. And he notices a mix of crash types. So there's a number of different interventions we can typically do, which involve things like rumble strips, signage, barriers, shoulder widening, no passing lines. The challenge a little bit is that in particular the areas where the fatals have occurred, some of those have already got 80 k's on them. We couldn't lower the speed any less than 80 because that's the
Don't want you to.
that's the default. But there is a potential that we could look at a number of safety interventions along it. But like I say, it's the challenge is to get them to go away and have a bit of a look at it and say, yep, do they agree that yeah, there's some suitable treatments that we could apply here, and then see whether there's a case we could put into the next NLTP. And then it's just got to get prioritised in the mix of everything else. So it's definitely worth raising. So your concerns about it are valid. You know, it's flagging that we should have a look at this and see what we can do with it. I think that, well, we'd dearly love to do a realignment, and I think that's in a harder basket, not never forever basket, but I think the safety interventions are probably an easier thing to look at in the next.
I certainly didn't expect that you were going to do that. I would just hate it to be lost, you know.
I know, yeah.
So, yeah, that sounds like a start anyway. It would be, I think it would be interesting for them to look at the fatalities there over a longer period than just the last 5 years, because it is a problem patch. It has definitely been quite a lot of fatalities over the years that I've been living here.
But also, Ian's just indicated that the number of crashes there isn't in that period of time, is an indication that there is.
That's right. So that's why I would like them to look at it over a longer period, because there's definitely something going on there.
This is a 2 year space in the early COVID, so we have people on the road and whatnot. So we have had brought that with using the roads like Colonel before COVID. You will probably show up in my thoughts, because I know a few as well that also happened previous to this map.
Yeah.
I guess the other factor, although it's not in regard to what you've got influence on, but it certainly isn't effective, is the link between our services in the time of emergency. You know, we've got one ambulance here in Hanmer Springs, we've got one ambulance in Colvin. So, you know, the ability to actually respond to these horrendous situations actually is reduced because we've got 2 small communities. All of these services are based on volunteer commitment to attend. When those situations do arise, it actually has a much wider impact. So, you know, if you look at the whole system improvement, whilst I know you're thinking about the roading aspect, but actually from a community aspect, there's probably other factors.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And the serious accident unit.
Yeah.
And any emergency
The distance.
vehicles needed to move damaged vehicles, they're coming from Christchurch.
Yeah,
So, you know, you're 2 hours away, plus they've got to get themselves ready and make sure they've got everything set. They're at least 2.5 hours away to get to the
so
accident.
it's kind of that social impact as much as it's about roading engineering.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think on that, Murray, you know, we've been in the unfortunate circumstance where we've had 4 fatalities in the last
Yeah,
2.5 weeks.
That's right.
On our roads.
yeah,
And there was 2 in very quick succession,
Yeah.
one weekend, and 2 in quite quick succession,
Mm.
just this last weekend. And so it really does drag heavily on our volunteers, both the Flores and St John's,
yeah,
which
huge,
cover those.
yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, I think they are factors, they're natural factors that have a huge impact to our communities outside of the ability to change the speed or change the engineering of the road, but I think it's important.
But it's not, I have to say, unfortunately, it's not unique to yourselves.
Yes, I understand that.
West Coast have got the same problems. Yeah.
Interesting, thank you.
thank you.
That's very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I know the West Coast do have the same problems, but we also have that these fatalities often happen when it's really, really busy. And we get, like, we only have about 1,000 people living here, but we can get anywhere between 2 and 5, 6, 8,000 people here on a weekend coming and going. And that makes it really, really difficult if something goes wrong.
No, I appreciate that.
Okay,
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
thank you so much.
How often does your committee meet?
Every month.
Right, we will endeavour to get you some answers in the next 2 months if we can to those first things.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's at May, June, yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for coming down.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Ian. Good-bye.
Thanks for your.
And if there's nothing more to talk about, or is there? No?
That's useful.
That's the end of the meeting.
We chat.
Was good. Don't know what will happen. Be interesting to get the feedback.